during the COVID pandemic. And we've moved on to talk about other things that are really on the minds of all Oaklanders. And certainly public safety has always been something that Oaklanders care deeply about. It's just a little more than a month ago that I had the tremendous pleasure of appointing Chief LaRon Armstrong. And so I'm very excited for all of you to get to know him a little better tonight, to have him answer your tough questions. We received many questions ahead of tonight's forum, and you will be able to send more live as we go through the evening. But right now, I want to give you my update just on what's going on in Oakland, particularly with regards to the pandemic. If you could cue the slides, please, Messiah. One piece of very encouraging news is that Oakland is in the red tier, but right now we actually have numbers that if they stay the same or go down, we will actually potentially be in the orange tier as soon as next week. Adjusted cases per day are 3.3 per 100,000. And orange tier is under 4. So these are very encouraging numbers. Don't let your guard down. We still have to wear masks. We still have to social distance. We still have to practice all those good habits. But these are encouraging signs. The last statistic, the lowest HPI quartile test positivity rate, that stands for Healthy Places Index. And in Oakland, we have 3 zip codes. The 3 zip codes in Fruitvale and Deep East Oakland are all in the lowest quartile of the Healthy Places Index in California. But the fact that the positivity rate is 2.4%, of course, we are still seeing a disparity with the overall positivity rate of 1.4%, but that also does qualify us for the orange tier if we can maintain or continue to lower that rate. Next slide. We are continuing to vaccinate lots and lots of Oaklanders. These numbers are somewhat recent, but nearly 700,000 Alameda County residents have received their first dose. That's the number of doses that have been given. 400 and almost 50,000 have received at least one dose, and almost 250,000 people in this county have been fully vaccinated. And in Oakland, our numbers are over 170,000 Oaklanders have received at least one dose. And that means that more than a quarter of our adult population has been vaccinated. You can continue to find out more when it's your turn at www.myturn.ca.gov. You may have heard this week that FEMA is making plans to potentially transition the operations of the mass vaccination site at the Coliseum to the county. That is under discussion. And most importantly, about leaving those 3 mobile vaccination sites that have gone into the most impacted neighborhoods with trusted messengers and incredible community partners like Allen Temple Baptist Church and the Native American Health Center. I really cannot tell you how blessed we are in Oakland to have these incredible public health warriors and community-based organizations that really bring a trusted and holistic and accessible version of health to our community. Thank you so, so much. Many of them are part of the Frontline Healers, a great coalition of community-based and grassroots health organizations serving the most impacted communities in Oakland. We appreciate you so much. Next slide. Some really, really good news this week in Oakland. Last week, we delivered our 25,000th laptop to an Oakland public school student as part of our Oakland Undivided campaign. I hope, Oakland, you are proud because this is unprecedented. At the beginning of the pandemic, when OUSD surveyed students, only 12% of low-income students of color reported having the tools necessary to engage fully in distance learning from home. Today, that is more than 97%. More than 97% of all students across every demographic and race in Oakland are connected, have a laptop, have an internet connection, and have tech support in their homes. And these computers are theirs to own forever. That is an incredible accomplishment. 97% online. Of course, we are not going to stop till we get to 100, but know that the national average is only 70%, even during this pandemic. So Oakland has really shown that when we come together to take care of our children, we can do amazing things. Thank you, everyone who has made Oakland Undivided possible. We are determined to close the digital divide for good. Next slide. Another huge, great announcement this week is Oakland announced the launch of our Guaranteed Income Demonstration Project. This is part of Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. And our implementation here locally is the fabulous Family Independent Initiative, with oversight by the Oakland Thrives Leadership Council, a collective impact organization here for Alameda County and Oakland. If you want to learn more about Oakland's Guaranteed Income Demonstration, please go to oaklandresilientfamilies.org. When you register at oaklandresilientfamilies.org, you can provide input about what you'd like to see in Oakland's Guaranteed Income Demonstration. You can receive an application when they are available. It is for all low-income families of color to apply to be part of this Guaranteed Income Demonstration. 600 families from across Oakland will be receiving a guaranteed income of $500 every month, no strings attached, for 18 months. To qualify, you must make below the area median income for a family of 3. That would be $59,000 a year. And at least half of the families that will be served will be extremely low income, making less than $30,000 a year for a family of 3. For more information, please visit oaklandresilientfamilies.org. This is an entirely privately funded initiative, no taxpayer dollars, but we are very, very proud. This is possibly the largest guaranteed income demonstration to date in the country. So excited. Next slide. Also today, the state launched housingiskey.com. This is a centralized website for landlords that are struggling with rent receipts. Landlords, please visit housingiskey.com, a state of California program to get you relief. If you are an Oakland tenant, you can go to the state website, but we encourage you to go to Oakland's own Keep Oakland Housed. KeepOaklandHoused.org is for Oakland tenants. State rent relief money is actually going to Keep Oakland Housed, which has other services and supports. So if you are an Oakland tenant, we encourage you to go to Oakland's own KeepOaklandHoused.org. Next slide. All right, and this is budget preparation time. As the mayor of Oakland, I have till May 1st to develop a proposed budget to present to the City Council for consideration. The Oakland City Council will have the final say over Oakland's $1.6 billion a year budget. We pass a 2-year budget, and that must be done by the end of June. Now, as part of my outreach in developing my budget, I love to get input from the public. And we have deputized a number of ambassadors that take a little bit of time to learn about the budget process and then share that information with friends, neighbors, choir groups, whatever your network is, to get input and to talk about, the most important decision that the city ever makes, and that is how to spend your public dollars on the very important services the city delivers. So if you're interested in being a Oakland Budget Ambassador, sign up by going to bit.ly/Oak Budget Ambassador. It's very fun and you will learn a lot. And you will influence the city's budget. Absolutely, public input always crafts that final budget. Next slide. All right, tonight we received many questions in advance, but if you want to put some questions in as we're going, and we're hearing from our speakers tonight, our police chief, the chair of the police commission, questions for either of them, please text 1-888-369-881. Text that to the number 72855. We'll show this slide again after we hear from our speakers. First up, we are going to hear from our newly appointed police chief. 10 years ago, LaRon Armstrong came and visited me as a newly elected city council member and said, Mayor, it's great to have an Oakland native in elected office. I'm an Oakland native too, and I want to be the chief of police for my hometown. It's been 10 years, but you have totally earned this title. LaRon Armstrong has worked tirelessly through the ranks of the Oakland Police Department, but through and through, he is an Oaklander. And as I did the due diligence in making this very, very important decision, I heard time and time again from community members that LaRon was the person that always showed up. LaRon was the person they knew from growing up, even before he became an officer. And LaRon was the person who was constantly fighting for reform and principled policing in Oakland. He has been very involved with our successful ceasefire violence prevention initiative, as well as our really groundbreaking work with Stanford University's Dr. Jennifer Eberhardt and the work to reduce racial profiling and racial disparity in policing impacts. It is such a great pleasure to introduce to you Oakland's newest police chief, LaRon Armstrong. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. It's always it's still a humbling introduction when I hear you say that, Chief of Police LaRon Armstrong. Right? It's been such a journey, and so happy to be in this role. Being born and raised in Oakland, I'm sure all Oaklanders know how passionate we are about our city, how much we care about our city, and how much we want to live in a safe community. And so, again, I thank the mayor for making me her selection as chief of police. I thank the police commission who put together a very comprehensive process to identify the most qualified candidates for chief of police. And now in this leadership position, I'm honored to lead this department. The Oakland Police Department is really going through what I believe is a cultural change. We recognize the moment. We recognize the call from our community about wanting to see a police department that they trust, that they have confidence in, and that they believe is there when they call. And so my effort is really to bring the Oakland Police Department to the forefront of policing, to be the most progressive police department in the country, the department that people have confidence in, that's practicing constitutional policing, lawful policing, but actually has the trust of its community. And so for me, this is a lifetime opportunity, but it's also an opportunity to change the image of a department that growing up, I didn't actually trust or didn't have confidence in. And so today I say to you that I'm honored to be in this position. I'm honored to be the leader of the Oakland Police Department. I want to talk to you about some goals that I've set for the police department. I often tell the mayor, and the mayor has heard this many times, is that Oakland deserves to be a safe city. I believe that with hard work between the police department, the community, our Department of Violence Prevention, I think we can be the city that all of us want to see, a city that is safe, that is not, that we as community members don't fear crime happening, a community that every community can come out and to our beautiful city and enjoy what all this city has to offer. I must say, I think that Oakland is one of the most beautiful cities in America, and we should not let crime overshadow this gorgeous city. And so I'm going to work as hard as I can. Our police officers are going to go out there and do their best job, and we continue to work with the city to identify all of the resources that the Oakland Police Department needs to do a really good job. Reducing crime is an effort that requires partnership. And that partnership really starts at the city level. How do we engage with our own city agencies? One of our key partners in our violence reduction strategy is our Department of Violence Prevention. Chief Guillermo Cespedes and I have been meeting frequently, talking about how we're going to respond to violence in the city of Oakland. And we've come up with a strategy that he calls our triangle approach to crime. And essentially that means that when we approach violent crime, we don't want to just have law enforcement be a part of the solution. That includes our Department of Violence Prevention as a response, but also community as a response to violence. And that's why our ceasefire strategy really becomes important. How we look at violent crime using evidence-based strategies to address crime is really key for the Oakland Police Department. The violence prevention that Department of Violence Prevention is providing to our community centers around their ability to interrupt violence, to prevent violence, to get our life coaches into the community to work with those that are involved in violence, to begin to cultivate relationships with community members, to get them engaged about violence that's occurring in their community, to figure out how we can engage with people to ask them to do something different or make different decisions, or how we can solve conflict without it leading to violence. That is so key, that as a community that cares about one another, we have to become aware of what's happening, and we have to come up with solutions that doesn't lead to gunfire or somebody being hurt or injured. Our ceasefire strategy has been tremendously impacted by the pandemic. The COVID pandemic has caused our department to not be able to actually engage in ceasefire like we've done previously. Our ceasefire strategy centers on direct communication, really allows us to actually participate in what we call call-ins, reaching out to those that are at the highest risk of being involved in violence or victims of violence, and bringing them to the table and having discussions with them about different decisions that they can make for their lives, but also allowing the Department of Violence Prevention to offer resources and support to those so that they can make different decisions to help them begin to turn the corner in their lives. But also allowing community to come into the room in terms of our clergy and other community partners to tell people that we care about them and that we want to see them two things. We want to see them both alive and we want to see them free. And that message has resonated over and over again. We know that it works because we've seen multiple years of reductions in violent crime. So we look forward to, as the mayor spoke of early, us moving into the orange tier, beginning to be able to open things up and have more dialogue with our community so we can practice this strategy as we've done in the past. We also practice custom notifications, custom messaging to people in the community about their risk of being involved in violence. And during the pandemic, that's been very challenging because we've had COVID restrictions that didn't allow us to get out in the community and speak to people directly. But again, as things open up, I see us being able to engage people differently. We also have done some organizational changes within the police department. I've recently redeployed our crime reduction teams into our Violent Crime Operations Center, centralizing our resources so that we can quickly respond to violent crime, so that we can be more nimble across the city, but bring more resources to immediately address crime spikes. We look forward to the success of that new strategy, and we hope we continue to see violence reductions. We also, I must say, I've actually created the most diverse executive team that we've seen in the history of this police department. We have 3 women as a part of our executive team in Deputy Chief Angelica Mendoza, Deputy Chief Drennan Lindsay, and Deputy Director Kiana Suttles. So I'm excited to have a diverse team. I'm excited to have a new team that's focused and motivated and ready to move this organization forward. Our compliance effort is really important. We've been under a negotiated settlement agreement for 18 years now. I've created a Bureau of Risk Management so we can focus on compliance. Compliance essentially means that this department needs to practice constitutional policing. It needs to follow its policies. And so we are putting in place oversight mechanisms to ensure that our officers are practicing constitutional policing and following policy. but also that every day we're holding ourselves accountable, making sure that our officers understand the values that they need to uphold as Oakland police officers, but also making sure our values are aligned with community values. That's what's important. Are we policing in a manner that's consistent with the values of those in the city of Oakland? So there's so many things that we're doing to help move this department forward. Mayor, I look forward to this conversation tonight. And again, I'm super excited to be the chief of the Oakland Police Department. I thank you for making that really hard decision and selecting me. And I'm here for whatever questions we might have tonight.
Well, Chief, before we turn it over to Regina, let me ask you a couple questions that came in ahead of time. And of course, people can submit questions right now through Thought Exchange. We will post the link again while we talk. But Chief, one of the questions we got was, what will you do to ensure the children of Oakland are safe as they travel to and from school? OUSD plans to resume in-person classes, motor vehicle traffic, gun violence, and commercial sexual exploitation of children are threats to our kids. What is your plan?
So obviously, growing up in Oakland and being a kid that walked to and from Oakland Unified School District schools, I know what it's like as a kid to walk to school. I also know what it's like when it's not safe, when you don't feel safe walking to and from school. So what we want to do is continue to have our resources that we have available to be present in our community. The one thing I've emphasized to our officers as much as we can is to try to get out on foot. That's why it's so key as we make these budgetary decisions. Our hope is that we get some of our walk-in officers back. We can have our community resource officers walking a bit more, and then working with the district, because I think there's sometimes that we think that it needs to be a police officer. And what I've seen that's worked well is that we have crossing guards in our community that is a presence in the community, that they're very friendly with young people as they come to and from school. As our young people go back to school and our crossing guards are back deployed on our streets and able to talk to our kids and welcome our kids back to school and make sure that they're safely crossing the street, I think that's going to be critical to see those people come back to work, their visual presence in the community. But I also want you to know that I've been going around to schools and just meeting with young people. I had a chance to go up to Castle Mount High School and go visit the Castle Mount football team and talk to those young men that are impacted by violence, that were fearful of walking home at night because they felt like they could experience some type of violent event. And just trying to share with them that whatever the police department can do to help make them safe, even bringing out vans to help transport them home, but also recognizing that we have a responsibility to make that corridor on their way home safe. And so getting my officers out there to make sure they address those that are out there involved in criminal activity, and making sure they understand as we communicate that these young people need to come home and need to feel safe, and please not impact them in that way. So we are out there, and we'll continue to be.
All right, Chief, a couple questions too about sideshows. The sideshows in the neighborhoods need to be more actively shut down. And then we also have a comment that says sideshows need an official location to use. They're not going anywhere, and other cities have developed official sites for them. So lots of feelings about sideshows. I will add, and I can chime in later, many of there are several questions that we received around traffic safety. Obviously, police enforcement is one part of how the city is trying to holistically create safer streets. And I'd be happy to talk about some of the engineering and other non-police things that we're trying to increase traffic safety. But Chief, what are we doing about sideshows?
Yeah, so unfortunately, due to budget cuts, in early January, the Oakland Police Department had to disband its sideshow detail. And once we disband that sideshow detail, we've seen an immediate increase in sideshow activity. So what we've been doing over the last several weeks is really working closely with the city administrator to give us the authority to be able to go out and provide extra resources to address sideshow. So we're making a couple adjustments, and I think the mayor just spoke of one that's critical, that we're not just doing it from an enforcement perspective, that the mayor, like she said, will speak to the work that we're doing with the Department of Transportation. But I'll say that we've been deploying resources for the last couple weekends, and really that centers around on intelligence. We're using intelligence that we get through social media to determine when a sideshow is coming to Oakland. We try to deploy officers to traditional locations where sideshow activity has occurred so that we can prevent these events from occurring. We've had some success over the last couple of weeks. We'll continue to work. One of the unique things we've seen about sideshow is it's expanded into areas that it traditionally hasn't been in. That includes Skyline and Keller, our heel beats, even right down the street from the mayor's house in the Diamond District. So we're all being impacted by the changes in sideshow activity. And so that's causing the department to actually have to do some adjusting by getting our helicopter up, getting a visual on where these sideshows are occurring. But really, it starts with us being out in the field early and deploying. And so we're hoping that our city council, when they make a determination about the funding, that they consider refunding our sideshow detail on a more frequent basis, so we can have a plan to address sideshow. We understand how it's impacting community, and I've heard your voices. I've read all the emails. I know how concerned you are, and I also know how dangerous this is. I'll let the mayor speak to some of the other things that we're doing with DOT.
Well, and it is true that Oakland got the excellent news that we are receiving $192 million from the American Rescue Plan. That incredible fiscal rescue for Oakland will make it possible for us to restore some of the services that we had to cut to avoid insolvency because of the revenue impacts we have felt due to COVID. So the city council is having a special meeting on March 29th. If you have opinions about how the council should be spending that emergency rescue money, some of it could be spent right away. Most of it should be reserved for the upcoming 2-year budget. But certainly we have recommended that we restore many of those police services that had to be suspended due to our fiscal crisis. But that please come and weigh in. I know the issue of police funding is a very hot topic in Oakland, but please participate in the city council meeting coming up on March 29th. And this is my last question for you, Chief. Then we're going to go to Chair Jackson, and then we'll take more questions that come in from the public while Chair Jackson speaks. Last question, I'm going to combine two. One is protection of young Black males should be a police priority. Young Black males in America are being killed at disproportionate rates. And Chair Jackson, I know you might have some opinions about that question as well. And a related question, community outreach policy. I would make it mandatory for every sworn personnel to donate so many hours a month serving with the community. What a way to fellowship. So Chief, what do you think of those two comments and suggestions? And when you're done, I will be introducing our fabulous Police Commission Chair, Regina Jackson. Chief.
I think that is the first question. I think is something that is personal for me. I've seen far too much violence in the city of Oakland. Violence has impacted me, myself, and my family. So I know that African-American men in particular have been victimized as a result of some of these tragic incidents that we've seen. That's why our ceasefire strategy that I mentioned earlier was so important. It's so important that we prevent these incidents from happening. It's so important that we go out and prevent retaliatory incidents so that these shootings don't continue. But it's also as important that we wrap our arms around these young men that are involved in this violence and really allow those in our community to tell them that they care about them and that they want to support them and that they want to see something different for their lives. That actually is meaningful. I've been in the meetings with these young men when some of them are hearing this from the first time from somebody that's not a family member. Right? For people that they don't know to just say, I love you and I care about you and I want to see you alive and free. So I think, again, we can't arrest our way out of this violence. This is going to have to be a solution that is collaborative, a holistic approach to addressing violence that includes community members acknowledging the systemic failures that sort of contribute to why we see people involved in violence and saying, how can we do better? How can we provide you the support that you need so that you don't have to be involved in violence? I think that's what it's going to take. Obviously, the police department has a role in that, but I don't think we are the key role. think the key role for the success of this community is to get people to put down guns and not be engaged in violence. And so I think that's important. And then I think the second question you thought is really important. It was one of the recommendations that came out of the Stanford report, to be quite honest. Can police officers be more engaged with community? Can they come in on their time without uniforms? I'll say that we got a pretty strong MOU that doesn't allow for them to come in on their off days and sort of work, but they can volunteer. And so we encourage them to volunteer. And we've seen officers come out and volunteer to clean up in our community, pick up trash. But one of the things that we've practiced is what we call squad-based projects, where every police officer in our patrol division picks a project, a community project that they can work on with community. We'll continue to do that, working with community, partnering with community to help solve problems. And not from a police perspective, not about arresting people, not about criminalizing people, but just around addressing community problems and working with community-based organizations to solve problems. So that is something that I have implemented within the department, and we'll continue to do that. And if you have an organization that you would like to see us work with, feel free to send it over to the chief's office, and I'll push it down to my staff, because as many organizations as we can partner with, we are open to it.
All right, Chief, we'll post the email for your office. What's the best email for that? Office of the Chief?
Yes, you can email it to Eric, OPD Media.
Okay, opdmedia@oaklandca.gov. Please suggest community organizations that you would like to see police volunteer at. I know every academy has to come up with a community service project as part of their training. And I've also certainly seen you recognize with awards officers that have gone above and beyond and volunteer in the community. That is a great way to set a culture. Now, speaking of wrapping our arms, particularly around young Black men, I cannot think of anyone who has done more of that than our next guest. She does so much more for Oakland than just serve as the chair of our police commission. She is the beloved, longtime executive director and CEO of the East Oakland Youth Development Center, known affectionately by so many people as Miss Regina. Regina Jackson, chair of our police commission. Thank you for being with us tonight.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Mayor Chef. I'm not sure if there was a question or if I was just supposed to generally.
You are welcome to give some framing comments. And if you want to respond to a question, I thought the last one that I asked the chief is also a great one for you to talk about, not only in your role as the chair of the police commission, but also in your day job as the head of the East Oakland Youth Development Center. What are we doing to protect young Black men that are disproportionately victimized by violence? And how do we get our police department engaged in the community?
Okay, thank you very much. And so I will send an email to Chief Armstrong to say that the East Oakland Youth Development Center wants to partner, and that'll be the first thing. But I am delighted that we have Chief Armstrong with us. The three of us are all Oakland, I'm not born, but raised, and certainly recognize a significant ownership and responsibility to the citizens of the city. With specific regard to African-American males, I am the mother of 2 adult African-American males, and I am here to tell you that every time they leave my house, I worry about them, and that doesn't stop. They're 27 and 31. And certainly our young men are not loved on enough. They don't have enough role models. They don't have enough experiences that tell them that the kinds of hopes and dreams that they might have are actually possible. They are, at least at EOIDC, put in positions to succeed, literally teaching classes or designing curriculums, things like that. But for young men who are pretty much raised by the street or often either overlooked or parents are so busy working and not able to supervise as much as they might like, we have to have a myriad of safe spaces for them to be in and around and engaging, because all too often they are attracted to the glitter of the street. And as a young person myself, I mean, it happens to everyone, but the issue is, are you hanging with the right people? Are you in the right place at the right time? Are you understanding and learning the importance of responsibility and character to build out the choices that you make in your life? And quite frankly, do you have somebody that you can talk to? Somebody who you think will listen? All too often, problems emerge because they don't have exposure to these very critical things. I know that I'm not going to give up. I know that there are a lot of nonprofit leaders who have made it their life's work to ensure that the most disenfranchised, which are usually our African American males, are welcomed in. But we've got to hit the streets, because all too often, many of those young men aren't going to walk through our doors. We got to go out and get them.
Well, Chair Jackson, thank you so much for your work. That is exactly what EOYDC has been doing for decades and decades. As the Police Commission Chair, do you want to share a little update about some of the policies that the Police Commission has come up with that really Oaklanders should know about and be proud of? Also, several of the advanced questions that we received really surround a lot of questions around sideshows as well as traffic enforcement. But I know that also the Oakland Police Department has been doing a lot of work to ensure that traffic enforcement really does not penalize poverty, really focuses on safety, public safety, and also is really working on not exacerbating racial disparities or the disproportionate stops of particularly African Americans. Would you like to talk about some of the work that the Police Commission is doing around traffic safety and reducing racial disparities?
Oh, that's a mouthful. So in terms of the policy work that we've been doing from the very beginning, our first probation and parole policy that called for no more warrantless searches was an extraordinary step toward transformative engagement in that, police officers, their hello cannot be, are you on probation or parole? And once a person has done their time, they have to be respected. They can't continue to be victimized by the sins of their past and given an opportunity to turn things around, not unlike what ceasefire programming does. We came up with an extraordinary use of force policy last year and had further did the carotid hold. We were really excited to ensure that OPD would no longer use that as a tactic. More recently, we have come up with the armed and unresponsive policy, which all of the policies really lift up the sacredness of life and the fact that we want de-escalation to be first and always a part of the process. And we've got a handful, well, not a handful, a bucket full of policies to go through over just this next year. But just last year, I think it was 151 policies that were like 15 to 20 years old. So we've got a mountain to climb. And what we're trying to do is focus on those areas that are most problematic. One, from the policy perspective, it's so aged that it does not align with the expectations of the community. So then you wonder, well, why is this? And it's like, it's just because it's so doggone old. So we're trying to prioritize addressing those so that we can have our policies catch up with how the community feels like they should be policed. Now, it may not always be in alignment, but we will do well to make significant progress in that fashion.
I hope Oaklanders are as proud as I am that this city has the strongest and most independent citizen police commission in the country. And that incredible volunteers like Regina Jackson are doing this incredible work to really align and pull policing practices to comport with Oakland values. And it is true, you're inheriting a lot of history and the way things used to be done that is not aligned with our values. It's incredible work you're doing. If people want to attend a police commission meeting, how can they do that? How can they get more involved in the work that you're doing?
Certainly. Thank you very much. And I do want to just acknowledge that although I am chair, I have a significant number of commission members. We are 7 in total with 2 alternates, and we need all the help we can get. But our meetings are the second and fourth Thursdays of the month. We usually start at 6:30. We do have a Twitter handle, Oakland Police Commission. And certainly, I don't know if I have my email memorized. I think it's rjackson@oaklandcommission.org.
We'll have our interns post. We'll post a link to the police commission's website. I believe it has commissioner emails in the website for anybody who wants to follow the important work of the Oakland Police Commission. We'll post that. Our interns will post that for you.
Thank you
Jackson.
very much. So the work is, it's another full-time job, quite frankly, for me. But I believe that the first wave of our commission, which almost, transitioned in October, they were some extraordinarily committed folks. And as the newer commissioners kind of get their feet wet, we're going to get into another cycle of significant productivity. Now, we finally have our own action plan, and we are just working hard at trying to address the most significant issues and make sure that we are supervising and providing feedback as best we can to, I'm sorry, that's my new puppy, as we can to support Chief Armstrong and his department.
Great, thank you. Now I want you to post the thought exchange instructions again. This is the part of the evening where we're just going to take questions live. I have a few more that came in ahead of time that we can respond to, but please, if you have a question, good, we've gotten some also. Please post them. I do want to remind people that this Chief Armstrong is the first chief of police in Oakland's history that was hired under a new process where our independent citizen police commission did the entire recruitment and screening process and presented to me 3 final candidates from which I had to choose. And so this was a team effort to put Chief Armstrong into this position. It was a fantastic process, and Oakland should be very proud that we have this process in place. All right, I see the first question that's come in from Thought Exchange, and please, you can keep more happening. Where are we with macro? And I will take that, and Chief, if you want to chime in too about how macro might impact the police department and your calls for service, which you get quite a few. Macro is a mobile response unit or a non-police response to 911 calls, specifically, particularly at first, to address mental health crises and other types of crises where you really don't need a badge and a gun to respond. Recently, the City Council took a slightly different approach to implementing macro and decided to not implement a pilot program with a nonprofit partner, but rather to place the program within the Oakland Fire Department. So we will be working to implement that direction as quickly as we can. This is an idea whose time has come. Certainly many cities started exploring non-police response in the wake of the state-sponsored murder of George Floyd. I am proud to say Oakland started this process 1 year before that tragedy. This is something that the community has really brought to our attention, inspired by a program in Oregon called the White Bird Clinic, and Cahoots is the name of this response program that inspired the macro proposal in Oakland. We are very excited to stand up a non-police response. Chief Armstrong, do you want to talk about how that's going to impact police calls for service and your feelings about macro?
Yes, Mayor. The Oakland Police Department welcomes the new addition to macro. Obviously, we are inundated with calls for service, and reallocating those additional calls, we hope, will free up our officers to be more available to respond to violent crimes. And so we are in full support. We've been working closely with the fire department as well as their group as they begin this planning process. We are sharing calls. We are giving them information about our response to certain calls and what calls we feel like can be deferred to macro. And so we look forward to the macro being deployed in the field to help take some of those calls off of the police department, allow us to respond to calls related to violence.
A related question is, what are we doing about mental health? We need to address it ASAP. I could not agree with you more. The city does not run mental health services. That is handled by the county layer of government. However, the city of Oakland and our police department does have a partnership with trained mental health clinicians. Chief, do you want to quickly address how someone can request that special service should they need it?
Yes, when you call into 911 with the call of a mental health crisis, you can say that call is nonviolent. You can say that person has a medical physician. You can request that we send a police officer to respond. We will allow our team of clinicians to respond. They are out there every day, 5 days a week until 10 o'clock p.m. to respond to calls without law enforcement. We also have our CAT team where an officer will respond just to make sure it's safe. But after the scene is safe, we will let the clinicians respond and the officer will depart and allow clinicians to provide the support and services. At the Oakland Police Department, we believe that we want quality service to be provided to our community members that are in crisis. And so when our officers, police officers are not the best to provide mental health services. We are police officers, but we go to any call where our help is needed. But when we have that resource like professionals that actually can provide quality service, that's the most appropriate response. And so we work closely with the Alameda County Health Department to ensure that we're giving the best response to our Oakland residents.
Chief, question for you. Illegal fireworks and gunshots on a daily basis should not be the norm. We need stricter laws. We need to figure out how to end this now. We need to feel safety in our homes and our communities. Do you want to respond?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You know, I'm often concerned about the number of gunshots that we experience in the city of Oakland, as well as the fireworks. And the mayor has been out with us on the 4th of July and seen how bad the fireworks can be. I think we have some concerns about how community feels about fireworks and if even police is the best response when we talk about fireworks, right? Because it's such a prevalent problem in Oakland, but it's very difficult to manage. We do our best job to investigate those that are selling illegal fireworks in our community that is impacting people in such a negative and harmful way. And so as we begin to focus in on our upcoming 4th of July, we'll have a plan in partnership with our fire department to address illegal fireworks. We again ask people not to use fireworks in our community. We obviously know how dangerous it can be, but it's something that we'll be focused on again this 4th of July. In terms of gunfire is and violence is our primary focus in the city of Oakland and the Oakland Police Department. One of the things that we are working with our council members on is expanding our shot spotter program so that it touches into areas that it currently doesn't. We want to make sure that we capture every shot that's fired in the city of Oakland. The Oakland Police Department is one of the only police departments in the country that responds to all shot spotter activations. So when a shot spotter activation does go off, we will respond at some point, collect that evidence. We also have a partnership with the ATF to analyze every piece of evidence that is left at the scene so that we can actually trace gunfire, so that we can actually connect these firearms, so that we can get them off our streets. We know that the firearms in our community are not bought in the city of Oakland, but they are brought into the city of Oakland, most times from beyond the state, whether it's Nevada or it's Arizona and places with less strict gun laws. We know that these states and their gun laws are impacting the state of California. So far in 2020, we've already collected 228 firearms. So our officers are focused on removing guns from our community, but we still continue to see those guns appearing in our community. We'll keep working. We'll keep trying to remove them from our community, and hopefully people will stop using them in our community.
Great. Thank you, Chief. A couple questions that are public safety related, but Chief, they're really not for you as much as they're for me. Public safety obviously is much bigger than just police response. So there's a question about illegal dumping, that it is an ever-present problem, and there are several spots that seem to be targeted over and over. Security camera surveillance, hefty fine. I feel Oaklanders are so disrespected by the ever-present illegal dumping. I feel enraged with all the garbage dumped on our streets. Hefty fines. We do have a fine program. In fact, we've, under state law, worked to increase our ability to raise those fines as well as hold dumpers accountable. Oakland has what's called environmental enforcement officers. If you see illegal dumping that you believe needs to be picked up, or you have any information about who caused that illegal dumping, please report it to 311. You can call 311 during business hours, or you can email 311@oaklandca.org. And that is where you can also potentially get reward money. If your information leads to an actual catching and fining of an illegal dumper, you can get a piece of that fine as your reward. I can say the city has tried surveillance cameras with mixed results. We do encourage people to use security cameras, and I'm sure the chief will tell you, security camera footage has been extremely helpful in holding particularly violent criminals accountable. Several very high profile acts of violence, actually, we were able to apprehend the suspects because of video camera footage. Next Monday, I'm very excited, Chief, that a new and improved link that will actually help you register your security camera with the City of Oakland's police department will be available up next Monday on the police department's website. That way, police know who has cameras and can get your footage quickly if there is some criminal activity that is being investigated in your area. There's also a question requesting more lighting and speed bumps. You can put in requests for additional lighting, although Oakland has moved to LED, which are brighter, better lights. But as far as speed bumps, there is a process by which you can request a speed bump for your city, for your street. And for years, we have always rejected requests for speed bumps on main arterials until this year. And I want to credit the family of Deontay Bush. Deontay Bush tragically lost his life while riding his bike on 35th Avenue when struck by a car. And his family advocated for more safety improvements along that very high accident corridor. And I'm very proud that our traffic engineers, and with the help of our fire department, I think Chief Luby was instrumental in inventing something that was created just in Oakland. It's called the Oakland Speed Cushion. And it's a slightly differently shaped speed bump that has tracks that allow AC transit buses, fire trucks, any emergency response vehicles to not be slowed down, but to slow vehicular traffic. So kudos to our great traffic engineers, and welcome the Oakland Speed Cushion. If you've been rejected for a speed bump on a main road in the past, please try again and say that this new invention may be something that could serve your community. You can get that process started again by contacting 311 or 311@oaklandca.org. Chief, we have some more questions for you that have come in. What type of infrastructure improvements are planned so that OPD data can be analyzed for better decision making? OPD needs to develop into a modern agency and develop innovative solutions to police communities. I know this is something you're very passionate about, Chief.
Yeah, I think, some would be surprised that OPD is actually one of the most data-driven police departments in the country, and our new slalom dashboards that includes our stop data, all of our contains all of our stops, our use of force, our complaint data, all of our officers' risk-related information is contained in these dashboards. We use these slides on a monthly basis to assess officers' risk, look at officers' engagement with community, determine officers that may need additional training, officers that may need some course correction if necessary. We are always ever present looking at what officers are involved in to determine if officers are doing the job in a professional way, doing a job in a manner that's consistent with what we're asking them to do. So I will say to you that you also will see soon, and I know the mayor's aware of this, our forward-facing dashboard, where community will actually be able to go onto our city's website and be able to look at officers' stop data in real time. Look at the number of stops that the Oakland Police Department is making, those stops being broken down by race. This is something that we've been working on for many years, and we have become a department that other cities are coming to as a model for how you reduce the number of stops, but also how you reduce racial bias in stops, particularly with African American and Latino stops. That's been our focus. Our intel-led policing is considered one of the most progressive approaches to policing in the country. Other cities like Berkeley and Vallejo and Sacramento are now reaching out to OPD to better understand how we've driven our numbers down nearly 70% over a 4-year period. And so it really shows that we are at the forefront. Data is the center of how we're achieving these goals, and working with Stanford and data experts that are doing analysis all the time is really helping. So,
and Chief, aren't you going to have a publicly accessible risk management meeting coming up?
Yes, Mayor. We're having it on April 9th. April 9th, we will have a public-facing risk management meeting where you will get an opportunity to tune in and listen to the Oakland Police Department talk about its stop data, look at its officers' stops, look at ask questions about race related to stops. I don't think you'll ever see another department in the country that's actually will have a public facing meeting where you will hear commanders actually question about officers' stops by race. So tune in. We'll be posting a link on our website as well and through our social media so that you can tune in for that.
Yes, and we'll post it on our social media as well. Again, incredible transparency from the Oakland Police Department. Chief, can you see the remaining questions on the screen from Thought Exchange? I would also ask if my interns could post a link to the City of Oakland's site about what we're doing about homelessness. I got a very compelling question before our forum tonight, someone wanting to know the city's response and how she can help. So if you could post a link to that information. Chief, I would ask you to just look at these remaining questions and give us, your final thoughts as we wrap up for our 7:00 end time. And then Chair Jackson, I will ask you to give us our closing words tonight. Chief.
Well, one of the questions that's been coming up multiple times, I think, and everybody has a lot of interest is what is the plan to help the Asian community? I want everybody to know that the Oakland Police Department takes all crimes seriously, and we are aware of the increase in crimes related to our most vulnerable populations. And so we are focused on having a greater presence, both in our Chinatown as well as our Fruitvale area. And what I did, working closely with the mayor, is that we immediately reassigned an officer to be our Chinatown liaison officer. This monolingual officer is in the community, talking with those that are non-English speaking, making relationships with our merchants and with our community. They're on the ground. We have seen a decrease in crime in the Chinatown area as a result of our response to the incidents that had occurred in Chinatown. So we're excited. We're working with the Chinatown Chamber of Commerce and other organizations in Chinatown to support our Chinatown community. We're also working in the Fruitvale area with in our Latino community for non-English speaking community members. We've assigned a liaison officer there as well. And so that officer has been present on the ground meeting with merchants as well. So we immediately begin to address that to make sure, particularly those that are non-English speaking, actually feel comfortable calling police, because what's most important is that when people are victimized, they feel comfortable using our 911 system and bringing that information forth to police so that we can follow up and hopefully hold somebody accountable for their actions. And so we are on the ground handling that problem. And just know that this crime is affecting all communities in Oakland. We're trying to address crime throughout our entire community because we've seen individuals in our community, the most marginalized, victimized across our city, not just in Chinatown, not just in the Fruitvale, but throughout our city. And all of our communities have been impacted by violence, and we need to address that. So just wanted to offer that, Mayor.
Chief, thank you so much, and thank you for your leadership in recognizing that having that special access with those liaison officers is important, and you are the one that decided to have them report directly into the chief's office. Chair Jackson, please wrap us up. You really are a wonderful leader and speak so beautifully about the comprehensive nature of public safety and why Chief LaRon Armstrong is such a great leader at this moment for Oakland.
Thank you very much. One of the things that I want to say for all the listeners out there is that you have to be part of a solution. Nobody in the city of Oakland wants the crime that we have, but we all have to play an active role. You know, get the information, turn it over. If officers are coming to support or, coming and not being supportive, make your complaint, but communicate. The only way that we will all get better, because we're all in this together, is to play an active role. As so many people are pushed out of Oakland through gentrification and all of the ugliness that the pandemic has dropped at our doorstep, we actually have to have more compassion and more hope and more action. The community cleanups, get involved. We've got enough blight that we could be cleaning forever. And to the extent that you are interested in participating in our police commission meetings, make your voice heard about the things that you like and the things that you don't like. We are here to hold accountable the police department and make sure that we're passing great policies that will have good impact. But we can't read everyone's minds. We need to have community voice. Citizen voice will make us all better and more accountable. So thank you very much, Mayor Schaaf, Chief Armstrong, and all of our listeners. Hopefully you found some good information here, and hopefully this won't be the end.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. Welcome, Chief Armstrong. Thank you so much, Chair Jackson, for elevating this amazing Oakland born and raised leader. And we will be back with future town halls. Please watch our social media channels. Thank you.